So let's add a few more points to the plastic story. It's a very extensive story, but in this context, I'm just trying to include it to give you a sense of how humans are impacting not just greenhouse gases, but also pretty much everything. And we are plasticizing life. I like this phrase, right? So global plastic produced, humans have created about 8.3 billion metric tons of plastic, outgrowing all man-made material other than steel and cement. So in the next podcast, we will look at all the things created by humans, including concrete, asphalt, steel, and so on. So here, for comparison, 1950 to 2050, this is where we are expected to grow. We started with about 2 million metric tons. We are by 2015, we were already 8.3 billion metric tons, which is greater than all man-made material, outgrowing all man-made material other than steel and concrete. How heavy is 8.3 billion metric tons? That's about a billion times the mass of the elephants, which is 7.5 tons on average. So that's the average mass. 80 million times a blue whale, which weighs about 104.5 tons on average. 800,000 times the Eiffel Tower, which weighs 20,000 tons, and 25,000 times the Empire State Building, which weighs 331,000 tons. Of course, those are estimates. Nonetheless, what happens to global plastic that is produced? Waste generation. I mentioned waste when I opened the last podcast. You can see that plastic waste can be recycled, incinerated or discarded where it accumulates in landfills and the natural environment. So by 2015 there were 6.3 billion metric tons of plastic waste. In 2050 it's supposed to reach, good lord, what's that? It's projected to reach 26 billion tons. So 9% is recycled right now, 12% is incinerated with all kinds of consequences, and 79% of it is accumulating in landfills and natural environments. Not a good story at all, right? So how does plastic or trash get into creeks? You have freeway on and off ramps, so litter from cars, trucks, and so on. You have spills on collection of garbage, litter from garbage and recycling bins. There are street fairs, which are really, really fun and important part of the community activities, but they produce a lot of tons and spillage. And you have overflowing and uncovered bins, illegal dumping, of course, illegal encampments, pedestrian litter, and so on and so forth, which all gathers into storms and storm drains and eventually tends to make it into the ocean. Major transport pathways for plastic from land to oceans, anthropogenic suspension and deposition. We saw plastic stuck in the tree before. That's kind of what happens. So lots of airborne stuff. Inland runoff and stormwater, treated wastewater, so the plastic is coming through there. River flows, industrial discharges, and biological transports where animals and birds are carrying them, cows eating and pooping somewhere, or birds picking up food material in plastic, eating them and putting them in different places. Direct input from maritime activities, the lighters and the albatrosses eating lighters that I mentioned, often those are thrown from ships, cargo ships, and so on. And of course there is transport of plastics by tides, currents, and winds. So you can actually use your ocean circulation knowledge to see where plastic should accumulate, as we will see in a minute. This is a schematic of plastic waste in the ocean and interactions that can occur from land to sea and surface to seafloor. So there is the input, and it's not clear how much output there is from the ocean into the air or onto groundwater and so on. So there is fragmentation, in the water and on land. There is biota that's consuming it and moving it up and down or across. Water column, upwelling, downwelling, biological circulation. Some biodegradation happens. Some photodegradation happens near the surface. It is getting carried on sea ice. That's how polar bears are also plasticized now. And of course you can find things reaching the bottom, like the tires, for example. As well. Okay, and this is a schematic illustrating plastic degradation processes in the ocean and studied components. So you can see here important environmental factors for plastic degradation include photodegradation that I mentioned. So weathering, leaching, fragmentation, assimilation into microbes and other marine organisms, and mineralization. There are a number of weathering and fragmentation studies, and we don't know what happens once it's out of the upper part of the ocean and goes below the lighted part. So there is different scales looked at: macro scale, larger scales; micro scales; nanoscales, so microbial degradation level; and molecular scales. So you have mechanical fragmentation, salt creating degradation, and microbial consumption and degradation as well. So this is a nice map called Maximenko Microplastics Counts. This is basically a model prediction of microplastic abundance at the ocean surface. The highest abundances in warm colors are in the ocean subtropical convergence zone, bands of 30-degree latitude in the North and South Atlantic, North and South Pacific, and the Indian Ocean. So you know that we talked about the clockwise circulation in the north and counterclockwise circulation in the south, where there is Hadley cell coming down, convergence of water, and downwelling of water. You expect convergence means congregation of all debris, floating material, including plastics. So you can see that. Upwelling and transport regions typically take the plastic out and push it into the subtropical gyres. Let me pause it. Sorry, I had a call from Amazon for a delivery, so this is the modern life with recording at home and being interrupted. So you can see the relation with ocean circulation and trash collection. There are great garbage pools in the ocean where convergence happens, but there are plans being made, depiction of a network. There is a chopper going by now, which is another interesting problem I have here in Mumbai where I live. Depiction of network of monitoring platforms that can be utilized as part of a marine debris observing system collecting data at various scales. So it's talking about satellites, aircrafts, drones, human beings, and so on. And a lot of these microplastics are able to affect the penetration of light into the ocean, which directly affects the sea surface temperatures and circulations. So there is a feedback happening that we haven't quantified yet. We have quantified it for things like chlorophyll, which also create a shading effect and trap penetrating shortwave radiation and change the heat balance, energy balance at the surface, and can create large-scale circulation changes, climate changes because of these energy balance effects. And that is pretty surely happening with plastic as well, but we haven't studied it extensively as well as such as of now. Okay, so all these figures are mostly from the National Academy of Sciences in the US that I referenced in the first slide, and they map this potential interventions for plastic waste interventions. So reduce plastic production itself, Innovate design and materials, so things like biodegradable plastic, so materials and product design. Decrease waste generation, so improve waste management to the extent that waste generation is not going to go to zero. Capture the waste, so plastic waste in the environment can be reduced, and minimize at-sea disposal, so plastic waste in the ocean can be reduced. And now it is found that the plastic that does make it into the ground or into the ocean is being consumed by certain microbes, and there are attempts to artificially produce these microbes to maybe manage the waste that is already there. Such a thing has been tried for removing oil spills, for example. Oil is basically a hydrocarbon. Plastic is also eventually some sort of a chemical that some microbes will consume. Could be a Frankenstein experiment of releasing microbes that you don't want, but for oil spills, these bacteria that consume hydrocarbons are produced and released into regions where there are oil spills from ships, and it is shown to have worked, and it does work. So maybe someday we will find some sort of a bio-inspired solution to take care of plastic, even though it is biodegradable by our regular system. There are special microbes that can consume plastic. Okay, so this gives you a sense of the plastic problem. Then next we will look at the anthropogenic mass, which includes other things like concrete, asphalt, and so on. Interesting stuff, but related indirectly to climate, but related in general to environmental degradation by human activities. I included these just to kind of give you a broader perspective on these things. Okay.